Hi Stampers, Sandy McIver here, and welcome to 7 and 7 with Picket Fence Studios. Today I'm creating with the slimline die cutting system and the die cutting inserts to make a fun Halloween shaker card with you. There are 3 new inserts this month, and we have a chandelier with an alphabet. Then we have this beautiful nativity scene. I'll be playing with that next. And we have this witch that we're going to be playing with today. And this is what happens when you cut it out with the die cutting system. And what we're going to do is pop it in behind a slimline card, and we're going to create a shaker card with it. To cut the circle in the top, I use this die. It's from the slimline die cutting system. Okay, and it was pretty straightforward. For the card front, I used the second from the largest die, and this is from Slimline Nested Rectangles dies. I love these sets. You can do so much with them. To create the background, I'm going to be ink blending with the life-changing brushes. I'm using Chipped Sapphire, Wilted Violet, Carved Pumpkin, and Mustard Seed. And I'm just starting over on the right-hand side, and I'm not worrying too much about getting blobs or anything into my blending because we're going to have quite a few overlays, and I'm also going to do a water splatter at the end as well. So it doesn't need to be smooth and pretty because we're going to have so much going on over top of it, you won't even notice. So here we go with the Carved Pumpkin, just using a circular motion, and I've kind of quartered this off so that there's a quarter basically for each section, but of course I do a little bit of rubbing to get away from any lines and adding a bit of overlay to it. Some of mine appear to need to be re-inked. We'll take care of that after the video. So the Halloween colors that I decided on today actually came from the sequin set that I'm going to be using to make the shaker card. Just in case you wondered where they came from. One of the other cards I did also has some pink in it, which is kind of fun for Halloween as well, and I'll show you that and another card at the end of the video. So I'm going to be outlining with this color as well. This is Chipped Sapphire, and it's nice and dark, kind of a midnight blue. Really, really pretty. So now I'm going back, and I like to do a second coat, and this is where I kind of blend out my lines, and you see that it gets a little bit more uniform and it blends in a little bit better, getting rid of all of those white spots. We definitely don't want any white spots in this. This is supposed to be a night scene. Okay, so you get the idea, right? I've cut the Scarecrow cover plate twice, once in black and once in white. I'm cutting the pumpkin row at the bottom off of the Scarecrow so that I can do an ink blending overlay, and by placing this over top of the black, it's going to create a really cool shadow behind the pumpkins. So that's cutting this off, and I'll take that Scarecrow and save it for later, and we're going to do a little bit ink blending. I'm going to be using the mustard seed and the carved pumpkin. I lay down the mustard seed first, so nice yellow background, and then I'm just going to do a blotchy overlay of the carved pumpkin. No need to be exact here. I guess you could color them with your Copics if you wanted to, but that would take a little bit long. I kind of like the ink blending. I love playing with these brushes. Okay, so I'm adding my carved pumpkin. Something I did notice though as I was doing this, that be careful about where you're doing this. I'm sitting right over top of the purple and blue that I just did the background with, and I actually picked up a little bit of those darker colors, and it blends in with my ink. So just a heads up there. Maybe I should have moved over to the right a little bit where the yellow is. Anyway, it's still workable, so we're going to be using it. Just adding my second layer to get a little bit more brightness in there. There we go. And then you see when we lay it over top of the black Scarecrow, we get that great shadow coming through. Love the smile on those pumpkins. Okay, so we need a background because it's going to show through behind our front. So I repeated the colors, and then I went around the outline in the Chipped Sapphire, just so that if you see any of the edges when I put the card together, they're going to be dark, so they're not going to be noticeable. So you want to do a little bit of splatter, so I'm just spritzing some water into my hands, clapping them over top of my art piece, and then dabbing it up with paper towel, and that's causing all those cool little white dots. Hopefully they look like little stars up in the sky. So I have all my pieces now to do my layering, and this is what we're going to build. Okay, it's going to be 3 layers, but we're going to put a little bit of foam strip in between so that we have room for our sequins. And I'm going to do the overlay with the scarecrow cover plate in the black. So she's going to be positioned at the bottom, see, and then the yellow really shines through, and then the overlay of the orange pumpkins. Isn't that cool? Love it. So we need to do a sentiment. I've decided on this, Not Scared You Should Be. This is another new stamp set this month, and I'm going to use those 2 little sentiments at the bottom. So I need my Misty for this. I am going to add the stamps over top of my little guys. And I really have to move the magnets around to center them in there. And I'm going to add some black ink. I'm just going to stamp it in black hybrid ink. So the sentiment will end up being at the bottom of my card. I thought about putting it in the middle, but I didn't want to mess up any of that pretty sky. So there we go. Now we're ready to do our overlays. You need a little piece of white, clear acrylic plastic, and I've cut one the same size as my little witch here. And I'm adding some Barely Art glue. This stuff dries really quick, and it also dries clear. It's really good for construction on cards. I really like it. Okay, so I'm just going to lay it over my acrylic piece, and then I pop a few of my ink pads over top just for some weight to hold it down until it dries. Next, we're going to glue our pumpkins together. So again, I'm using the Barely Art glue and just adding the white glue to the back of my orange pumpkins that we just finished doing our ink blending on. And you want to get it in as many spots as possible so that it dries and stays really flat. So I'm kind of going all around all the little faces, trying to get a little dab of glue. I just love the fine point tip on this glue. Really gets me into some tight spots. Not normally a good thing, right? So again, remember to offset them a little bit so that you've got that black showing through. I ended up not offsetting them quite enough. I wish I had done a little bit more to the right just to provide a little bit more of a shadow, but it's doable. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to add another layer of glue because we're going to attach it to the bottom front of our art piece. So again, we want it as flat as possible, so take your time and add as many little dabs of glue as you can to all the little pieces that are sticking up or are thin die cuts. It will help to glue them down flat and make your card look a lot more professional. Okay. Line it up with the bottom right hand corner. I got glue on my fingers, can you tell? Okay, and again, I'm going to add a stamp handle over top of this to let it dry for a few minutes to make sure that it dries nice and flat. Okay, so it's dry. I'm bringing my scissors in and I'm going to snip off any of the excess that's hanging over the edges. There we go. Everything's dry and we're ready to start putting the card together. So my witch needs to go behind the circle in the top. So again, more glue. And you do not want to put any glue on the witch this time. You don't want to put any glue on anything that's showing. Just what's going to attach to the back of the card front. There we go. Fits like a glove. Isn't she cool? Now it's time to flip the piece over because we need to add some foam to the back. This is from Doris. It's 33 pieces of long, skinny foam squares, but they're cut into strips. So what's nice about them is you can curve them, so they work really, really well going around circles and ovals when you're creating your shaker cards. So as you see, I'm just taking my time and pushing down as I go to attach it to the outside edge of the card and getting it in there as tight as possible. And you just gently pull the strips off, and then you can just work your way around the card. And you want to stay in just a hair from the actual cut border so that you can't see this when you're looking at the front of the shaker card. And it's just a little bit short, so I'm just going to grab another little piece, insert it there, and then cut off the extra. And then I will also use these down the outside edge of the card, because of course the card has to stay the same height as what you've got going on here for the shaker card. So you need to kind of build it up. And these work really well. I get these from Simon Says Stamps. I usually do an adhesive order in the summertime because I live in Canada where it's really cold in the wintertime and glue doesn't like to sit in our post office boxes for a long, long time. It does funky things when it gets frozen to -40. So stock up on these. They're a really good deal. They're 1/8 by 3 3/4 or 3 by 95 millimeters. And I do put a couple of pieces into the middle just in case if you're mailing the card it doesn't cave in the center. And you just need a couple of scraps in the middle to hold it up. There you go. There's my second piece right there. Okay, now comes the fun part. We're going to play with the sequins. This is the July Trick or Treating Sequin Mix. And again, this is where I got my colors from for my card today. And there's little moons in here. They're really, really cute, along with a bunch of different colored sequins. And what I'm going to do is just pile a bunch of them up right over top of my witch. Now, you don't want to overfill this because then the sequins won't move around. They'll all be stuck together. But you want enough in there to make the card fun. So I do just a couple of pickups with my fingers. And then I'm removing the protective cover from my foam strips. And you got to be really careful and hold on to your card. Otherwise, you might shake all your sequins out of the center of that circle. And then you're very carefully going to add your back card piece. And hopefully it all lines up. But just in case it doesn't, that's why we used the ink and went around the edges to make it nice and dark. There we go. There's the front of our shaker card. Isn't that cool? Woohoo! For the card base, I'm using a purple that matches the card, and it's cut 7 by 8.5. You're going to put the 7-inch top side piece into the score buddy, and you're going to score at 3.5 to create the side folding slimline card. Okay, so just fold it in half, and then I started using a tape runner to put the back of this down, but it's fairly lumpy because of the foam tape, and it started skipping and missing a little bit, and so I ended up using my score tape, which is put it down like this, and you want to do the two sides and then remove the protective covers before you do the ends, because if you tape over the ends, it's really hard to get that protective cover off. Just giving you a heads up there. This stuff is also super strong and like never comes apart. So it's really great for a little bit heavier card fronts like this one is, because it's got multiple layers plus the sequins. And I do 3 across the back just to make sure that it's secure in the middle and lays nice and flat. So there you go. So we're just going to peel off those little pieces, make sure we got everything right side up, and center it onto the card. I always hold my breath when I'm doing this, hoping I'm getting it straight. Because with this tape, it's a little hard to take it apart. We have a few of these little bats. And I don't know if you noticed when I showed you this insert die to begin with, but there's bats, there's crows, and there's actually a cat in there too. I thought about putting the cat on the broomtail of the witch, but he was kind of looking the wrong way, so I decided to go with the bats today. And then I have a fun little thing for you. So we got all the bats, and I'm going to glue those down. Have you tried using your jewel wand on little bits of paper? It works so fabulously you won't believe it. So I like to pick up my little die cut pieces, pop my little piece, my glue there, and then lay my little bat back down. It works really, really well. So not just for sequins and jewels, also for little bits. So glue your 3 little bats down, and then we're going to add some eyes to them. So I don't know if you picked up the Croak sequin mix last month and checked it out. It's got eyeballs in it, and they are the absolute perfect size for these little bats. Too much fun. Here we go. So you think frogs, right? Yeah. Croak, who wouldn't? But open that up and grab the little eyeballs that are inside. Now be careful about these little guys. I have ended up with more of these shakers on the floor because once the lid's open, I bang it and they go flying everywhere. Now check out these little eyeballs. Aren't they cute? They're perfect. So I glued those down, again with a little dab of the Barely Art glue, just to add the finishing touch to this fun card. I really like the purple eyes on the scarecrow. That turned out cool. So the other ones that are in the kit, again, as I said, we've got the nativity scene. I'll be playing with that shortly. Then we've got this lovely chandelier, and you can put anything you want for a sentiment with that set of alphabet. And then here's the one we use today. So in previous releases, we also have a mermaid. We have these awesome little palm trees. There's an under the ocean kind of floor, ocean floor. There's a tree of life. There's cool mushrooms. A beautiful, beautiful monarch. And happy graduation. So another idea, you can cut the circle out, and we have this other cool die that is out this month. This one is called the Halloween Graveyard Cover Plate. And so it's got a tree and a hotel, a haunted hotel, a cool picket fence. It's got all kinds of little things going on. You can layer it in behind, as I did here, okay? Cut off the excess. And then I used the spiders. This is one of those 4x4 repeatable stamps. So I went all the way down with the spiders on the background. And then I used the cool goblin from Not Scared You Should Be for the bottom. And then I did all of the sentiments on one strip of black, and I white heat embossed them because I couldn't decide which one to use. But I do this quite often. I do all the sentiments and then I just pop it into the case with the stamp set to use for other cards. I decided I wanted the sentiment at the bottom because I really didn't want to cover up those cool spiders. So I'm just trimming down the edges, and I'm going to use a couple of foam squares, well, actually 4. And that's going to pop it up off of my goblin a little bit for me. So this is the card that I told you that I incorporated a little bit of pink in it, and I like it. It's kind of a fun color to go with Halloween. And lime green, of course, you can see at the top behind the houses as well. So, like I said, just grab these other ones and pop them into the sleeve with your stamp set, and then you've got them for your next project. And here's a third card that I made. And this also uses the Not Scared You Should Be, and I use the big goblin this time. And it is a huge stamp, so you want to make sure that you use your Misty when you put it through, because you're going to have to stamp it a couple of times. And then again at the bottom, I used the Halloween Graveyard Cover Plate. And I also put some little eyeballs into, sorry, my camera's a little bit out of focus there. There we go. Put some eyeballs into the tree and the hotel, and then some bats flying up and around. I thought that was kind of a fun card too. So there we go. Got 3 awesome Halloween cards. And one of them's a shaker. Don't kids just love shaker cards? Actually, adults do too. I love playing with them. So there you go, 3 slimline Halloween cards, and we used all of the slimline dies, and we're playing with the die cutting system inserts to make our little pops at the top. And we covered the Halloween graveyard cover, the scarecrow cover plate, all new this month, July, from Picket Fence Studios. So thank you so much for joining me today to make these cards. I hope you had fun, and I have listed everything below for you with links over to the Picket Fence Studios website. And until next time, happy stamping!